Hi, everybody, and good morning. I think, let's see, Michael just told me which program we were on here. I just have to find it. Um, it's 30 something, isn't it, Michael? Something like that.
It is program number 39.
Okay, 39. Very good. Thank you. Well, and we're going over a treatise on cosmic fire, and we're doing it in such a way that we can improvise a little bit rather than going through the absolutely detailed work that I did some years ago. That will be available to you on Makara if you want to get deeply into the matter, but I discovered that it is so detailed that we can't make much progress if we go over uh, those points, commenting upon the commentary. So, in fact, um, we will use a little bit more improvisational approach. Well, as in all of these meetings, we have been beginning with the great invocation number 2 because there is still an unstable period before us. And since the events within the United States have a great deal to do with how democracy is pursued worldwide and in terms of humanity in general, no matter what country we're in, we work for the preservation of democracy. And there will probably be quite a number of surprises. There are various strategies which are being used in order to nominate new electors for the electoral vote and conference. And these electors could swing the election back into a point of illegitimacy. So, being students of occultism, we work within and try to establish the presence of the Christ, the presence of the hierarchical vibration as a great defending wall against such calculated dishonesty. And we will begin then with this work for Great Invocation number 2. Let the Lords of Liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, O mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O Mighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. So let us keep these very powerful thoughts in mind as we go into the weeks ahead. Perhaps there will be some resolution coming up sooner than we think, but at the moment the whole process is temporarily in play, and we have to be very cautious. That's all I can say. Now, we went as far as the first fire and the second fire, page 48 and 49. We were saying that the first fire deals with the activity of matter and the rotary motion of matter. That is the type of motion associated with fire by friction. And the development of matter by means of friction, because unless there is interaction, there is no development. We have to remember that if we each stay in an isolated rotary motion, we do not exchange with others. And that kind of exchange, by coming within the orbit of another, and they within our orbit, is the means of development.
Michael?
Yes.
Would you like to change your screen share to the document?
I'd be crazy to. Okay, there we go. All right, activity, there it is. I trust you see it now. Oh, and by the way, I just, I'm a little bit, little out of order here this morning, unfortunately. But I want to welcome Annette and Astra and Catherine and Cindy, Frederick, Joe, Karen, Martine, and Nathalie, and let's see, Raja Lakshmi, and Risto, and Raz, and Sanjay Kumar, and Sriram, Tuya, and Zenaidi. Welcome to all of you. So anyway, here is the first fire. Here's the second fire, which is in a way, the linking fire, the expression of manas and the vitality of the soul. Now we have something from Annie Besant in footnote number 15, and I think we kind of stopped there last time because it was a very detailed footnote. And let's see, again, I think I need to change my focus. And here's what she says. And we can think about this because it's a very good book, The Study of Consciousness. and we'll see whether, we agree with everything here. In the study of consciousness, Mrs. Besant says, quote, consciousness is the one reality in the fullest sense of that much used phrase. And, right there, it's a debatable point. It follows, she says, from this, that any reality found anywhere is drawn from consciousness. Hence, everything which is thought is. Well, with that, we can go along. But the question is, can we differentiate being from consciousness? And in terms of the triplicities which we are offered in the Tibetan's various books, I think we can differentiate essence or being from sentiency, sensitivity, the higher sense of touch, which is consciousness. But, still, that point can be debated. That consciousness in which everything is, everything literally, possible as well as actual, actual being that which is thought of as existent by a separated consciousness in time and space, and possible, all that which is not so being thought of at any period of time and at any point in space. I think he says we call absolute consciousness. We have differentiated between the actual and the possible. The possible exists within the super universal consciousness, as I understand it, of the great transcendental deity above and beyond any universe. And the actual is the emanative objectivity of that consciousness or of that being when a universe is created. So let's just say that actual is an in-universe term, and possible has more to do with absolute infinitude in an articulated form above and beyond the universe. So what I'm doing right here is contrasting the view that I've been attempting to impart in our Identify as Being work with what Mrs. Besant is saying here. I'm making a contrast. So this consciousness in which everything is possible, and I guess we could call that, the infinite articulated consciousness of the super universal deity. She says we call that absolute consciousness. And with that, I can certainly go along. It is the all, the eternal, the infinite, the changeless. Well, that's another question about change. Let's just say if it's truly infinite, then all possible changes exist within it. The only true changelessness, in my view, at least, all I can do is offer what I think at this moment, is the absolute itself. Not the absolute consciousness, but the absoluteness. That is truly changeless. once we get into the realm of possibility, in a super universal sense, we have entered the realm of change. Consciousness, thinking time and space, and of all forms as existing in them, in succession and in places, is universal consciousness, the One, called by the Hindu the Saguna Brahman, the eternal with attributes, the Pratyag Atma, the inner self. She's giving different names for the same factor from different traditions. By the Parsi, Hormuzd, and by the Muslim, that's, the Islamic tradition, Allah. Consciousness dealing with a definite time, however, let's see if I can get this down to where it belongs. Long or short, with a definite space, however vast or restricted, is individual, that of a concrete being, a lord of many universes, or a universe, or of any so-called portion of a universe, his portion, and to him, therefore, a universe. These terms vary as to extent with the power of the consciousness. To me, the consciousness is always the secondary factor, but it seems here in this footnote to be put forward as primary. So much of the universal thought as a separate consciousness can completely think, that is, on which he can impose his own reality, can think of as existing like himself, as his universe. Well, this is a fairly, complicated footnote, and I think it requires pondering almost line by line. But I think that consciousness within any universe, within it, is limited. And it is limited by the extraction from the absolutely infinite consciousness, which was taken, shall we say, into objectivity, and which rode, if I can use that word, rode into objectivity as the ray of the absolute. So every universe is different. Every universe has its limitations. Every universe is a finitude, and I'm constantly speaking of every universe because of the great breath, which breathes out and then inbreathes universes, never able to externalize in a finite universe all of the possible. The possible is contained in the super universal reflection, self-reflection of the absolute deity. And all of this still falls under the indescribable, or is less complete than the indescribable sameness of absoluteness. So, here you can obviously see she's really using the abstract mind, and in order to, determine what she's really saying here, we would have to go over it line by line. But the main thing is that she looks at consciousness as the fundamental reality. But then I always say, where is the being? If consciousness, which is an attribute, is the fundamental reality. And basically, the triplicity, the triangle of being, consciousness, form, to me makes the most sense. So, we could spend the whole time here, but we can differentiate. Let's get into our minds the difference between the actual, which occurs in universe and is a result of the act of a portion of absolute infinitude going into finite objectivity, which we call a universe. That's the actual. The actual relates to the Mahamaya, as far as I can understand. I always have to say that because, always deeper and deeper possibilities can be elusive. But the possible, which is not yet externalized in a finite universe and never has been, and maybe never will be, relates to the super universal deity and the detailed reflection of that deity as it sees itself with all of its distinctions, all of its possibilities, as if they were real in its consciousness, which they are. Of course, this is way beyond us. So many of us simply have to learn how to enter into the abstract mind and think in larger terms, and that would already be something. But it stimulates the mind and enlarges it to use some of these abstract mental exercises. So I can't be satisfied with what I said here, and you shouldn't be either, but at least it's a beginning. Consciousness dealing with a definite time, long or short. See, that's consciousness in the universe. And that is individual. Yes. So the universal logos is always, in a way, the same universal logos, the same self-perceiver, the same emanator, the same becoming one, the same self-becoming one, but the rules of its objectified existence change from universe to universe. There's no way to count which particular universe we are in at this time, because we have an infinite, beginningless series. And therefore, at any point along that apparently linear oscillation of universe, no universe, universe, no universe, there is no number, no ordinal number that can be attached to it. It can't be the first, it can't be the millionth, it can't be the billionth, because it's always infinitely preceded. So, when Galileo said that God cannot be understood because of his, Galileo had certain experiments that he did that convinced him. They were like thought experiments. They convinced him that God could not be understood, certainly not by a human being. And I begin to think, how can God be understood even by much greater beings than we are? And I guess it depends on which God we're talking about. There is, we are finally in our unveiled state. We are that universal logos. We are that. And we will realize it again when the path of return is trodden to its end. But temporarily, we appear to be something else. Now, let's, so as coming back here, and then before Michael catches me, I better go back to the text. All right. The evolutionary expression of the soul as it shows forth in the form of that elusive something which brings about the synthesis of matter, and that is the second fire. And we're trying to unify all relations around us and render them harmonious. The second fire, solar fire, is what helps us do that. As the two merge, I suppose spirit and matter, by means of this active energizing factor, that which is termed consciousness appears. So you see, in DK's presentation, consciousness is not primary and irreducible. In DK's presentation, consciousness is not primary and irreducible. It is derivative. It derives from the union of spirit and matter. And there are different ways to look at this, of course. As the merging proceeds, the fire becomes more and more synthesized. That totality of manifestation, which we regard as a conscious existence, becomes ever more perfected. Well, if we take it right down to the microcosmic level, we as a soul, as a son of God between father and mother, become ever more perfected. The operation of this fire, it's under the law of attraction and incidentally of repulsion. And then point E, the subsequent result in the spiral cyclic movement, which we call within the system solar evolution, but which from the standpoint of a cosmos is the approximation of our system to its central point. And what is the central point of our system? There's good reason to believe the central point is the Pleiadian system, which is sort of the hub of the wheel within this being that we call the one about whom naught may be said. And all of this must be considered from the standpoint of time. Now, I don't even know if I dare get into this next one. Well, it's shorter anyway. Footnote 16 repeats from Mrs. Besant, universal consciousness manifesting as consciousness in time and space. Okay, we can go along with that. As Mrs. Besant so ably expresses it, includes all forms of activity and spiral cyclic evolution from the standpoint of cosmic evolution. Well, our solar logos is a cosmic being and is evolving cosmically, and we are going along with it. And in terms of absolute consciousness, may again be rotary. Now, there is where I take an exception, because absolute consciousness is the prerogative of the super universal deity. When universes are not. The universe is a self-perception of this universe, this super universal deity. And there are times when that self-perception thrust forth into objectivity does not exist. So this is an obscure statement to me that the consciousness may be rotary. Now we know with spiral cyclic motion, there is an encounter that consciousness has with all kinds of possible registrations, and always, ideally, on a higher and higher turn of the spiral. Astrology seems to show this, and probably the ray cycles show this. So there is a spiral cyclic motion. And our sun, too, has its own proper motion, and we are going along with it, driving through space. But because we are in our solar system revolving around the sun, as the sun moves in its proper motion, we are creating a spiral. So basically, in life and in incarnation, we will a few times encounter similar situations, but always from a perspective which is higher than the perspective we left behind, unless, of course, we are falling into degeneration, which would be a sad thing and would have then the results of a descending spiral. But generally speaking, because there is rotary motion, and because there is straight progressive motion driving forward through space, the spiral cyclic motion is created. Now that shows you in a way that the second fire with its motion is derivative of the combination of motions of the first aspect and the third aspect. So you have to have the parents before you can have the child. And it is the interplay of these two, the father and the mother, the father being progressive onward motion, driving forward through space, and the mother being rotary motion. Because of their interplay, the child, which is the spiral cyclic motion, originates, comes into being. You know, we can call this all investigations into the first family, considered from a metaphysical point of view. But from the practical perspective, right here and now, we are improving in our consciousness. And when we meet something similar to what we met before, though on a higher turn of the spiral, we will respond to it in a more adequate manner. Maybe even every year this will happen. Maybe we will encounter things now that we encountered a few years ago, and we will have a more illumined perspective about it because of the spiral cyclic motion. And of course, astrology will help us with that. And one of the ways in astrology that we are led into this higher perspective is through the solar return. You know, every year there is kind of a birthday chart which gives us a chance to deal with a new set of circumstances, but at least it's also a building of our solar personal capacity year after year. So there are ways to connect our tools, such as astrological tools and rheological tools, with these cycles considered microcosmically. Now, right now, we're studying macrocosmic cycles as well. All of this is foundational, fairly abstract, and maybe more difficult than some of the detailed things he says later on in the book. But we have to get used to thinking this way. At the same time, having the humility to realize that this book is written for initiates. It's written on the first ray and third ray rather than on the second ray. You know, a treatise on the 7 rays, those 5 books are written on the second ray, but this book for initiates, and we do not presume, is written on the first and third ray, and we'll get something out of it, but not the full benefit that the initiate consciousness would extract from it. So far, we've studied 2 types of fire here, fire by friction and solar fire. And this second fire is deriving from the cosmic mental plane. And that's a long way up there, if you know what I mean. When you look at the, let's see if I can, well, I'm not so easy to do. We're just going to try to do that now in this way. The cosmic mental plane is not even articulated. When I use the word articulated, I mean differentiated. Okay. There's no differentiations offered. They exist, of course, but in regard to the cosmic astral and cosmic mental planes, maybe one thing that the causal body of a solar logos, which I think is the causal body of our solar logos, in this case, is found upon the first subplane of the cosmic mental plane. But this whole second fire is derivative of this high level of activity and consciousness about which literally we know nothing. DK says he doesn't even want to speak about the cosmic astral plane because he has not been there, and that's one cosmic plane lower, vibratorily lower. Presumably there is vibration on these higher and higher planes. It's a staggering thought what goes into the composition even of our local one about whom naught may be said. We are so primitive in our apprehension of these realities. All we can be is humble, proceed step by step as item after item of factual information is offered to us, and we begin to piece it all together in that giant eventually unified jigsaw puzzle, which helps us look at our local cosmic environment with increasing meticulous entirety. You know, meticulous entirety is one of the qualities of a certain type of second ray expression. Not all second rays operate with meticulous entirety, but those that are in relationship to the third ray do deal with meticulous entirety. I think if you go to Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, page 394 or 393, right in there, you'll find DK's very interesting definition of meticulous entirety, and that's how he operates. His particular mode of teaching carries that kind of knowledge which can be presented to us and to whomever is learning from him with meticulous entirety. I don't know if it appeals to you or not. For some people it really appeals, and for others they'd rather just get to the essence of things, to the principles of things, and others would simply like to deal with pure love without worrying too much about all the interactive detail. The third fire is all about the evolution of spirit. Now, when you use a phrase like evolution of spirit, you have to wonder whether spirit per se ever evolves. But the expression of spirit through its instruments does evolve. Spirit is spirit. Spirit is being. Spirit is essence. And, one of the ideas behind this way of thinking is that absolute essence, the very core of the monad, which is pure being, does not evolve. What does evolve is the ability to express that spirit through forms which are ever more sensitive. The forms evolve, but spirit itself, its expression can become enhanced through an evolving form. But being per se, at least as I think of it, I have to always preface that, does not evolve. But anyway, he talks in general about the evolution of spirit. Practically nothing can, at this stage, be communicated anent this evolution. In other words, we might put it in practical terms and say how our monad learns or achieves expression through the triad, the egoic lotus, the aspects of personality. That might be the simple way of thinking about the evolution of spirit. But still, we're not at that stage when anything really significant can be communicated to us, because we just don't have the sensitivity and we don't have the cognitive ability to grasp what is really happening. But we have to live in the faith that all of this will become ours eventually. The development of spirit can only be expressed as yet in terms of the evolution of matter. Well, that's kind of, in a way, what I was saying. And only through the adequacy of the vehicle and through the suitability of the sheath, the body or form, can the point of spiritual development be reached or in any way appraised. Now, when you use a word like spirit, you're also thrown into the spiritual triad. And there are aspects of the spiritual triad which do seem to evolve. In other words, does any of us right now have a fully developed Buddhic vehicle? I doubt it. Does any of us right now have what a master has, probably has, a fully developed atmic vehicle? I doubt it. I don't think so. And when it comes to the monadic vehicle, the higher temple, the temple of Ezekiel. We don't have that yet. So those are the subtle material developments, the vehicular developments on a very high level that allows the essence of spirit to express itself ever more fully. So basically, he said, if you want to talk about the development of spirit, you have to talk about the evolution of matter. And he doesn't just mean gross matter, because, even the mental vehicle that we will one day have when the causal vehicle is gone is material. Everything on the cosmic physical plane is material. The Buddhic vehicle is material in the sense of very refined. If it wasn't material, you wouldn't have these Buddhic atoms. They are, subtle material units. And, if we study occult chemistry a little bit, maybe, Janara Jadasa with his first principles of theosophy, he goes through a lot of things, including the material to be found on the cosmic physical plane. And that material boils down to a unit that is called a bubble of the koilon, or a bubble in the koilon. So we do live on a cosmic material plane. Now, in the same way, when we come down to the microcosm, we can say, hey, our astral body is material. It's got its own atoms. Well, indeed it does. And maybe from a cosmic perspective, since the cosmic astral plane is going to provide the cosmic astral body of a great being, it too is material in a way that we cannot understand. From a certain perspective, anything objective is material. And then on to the cosmic mental plane, it will have its own vehicles. Composed of what type of unit, we don't know. I mean, everything, all these structures on the cosmic physical plane are resulting from the bubbles in the koilon. And there's some great number, is it, I don't know, 14 billion bubbles in the koilon arranged in a particular way will make an etheric permanent atom, and so forth. Less and less, because the atoms get simpler as we rise. Less and less bubbles in the koilon are required. But it's the development of the vehicle which makes the expression of spirit possible. Now, in the very essence of spirit, the essence of the essence of the essence, comes the purest livingness, which finally ends in absoluteness. But as Blavatsky said, it's beyond the range of all thought, and especially human thought. So basically, let's be simple about it. If you want to express your consciousness ever more completely, refine your vehicles. If you want to express the identificatory power of spirit ever more completely, refine your vehicles. That much in a practical sense, I think, can be said. A word of warning here should here be interpolated. When you read Master DK, I'm currently reading and commenting on Letters on Occult Meditation. There seem to be warnings on every page. Warnings, I think warnings on every page. And it usually has to do with the danger of mantrams and the danger of premature meditation upon this or that, or our inability to use certain forms of meditation because, they're way beyond us and we would lose control. Warnings everywhere. And it gives you the idea that if you're really going to tread the path of occultism, you've got to be really careful. That seems so mundane to say that, but you've got to be really, really careful. Just the way a magician is careful in drawing his circles and pentagrams, lest he be overcome by the forces which he has aroused. So anyway, a word of warning should here be interpolated. Just as it is not possible upon the physical plane for the physical vehicle fully to express the total point of development of the ego or higher self, so it is not possible even for the ego fully to, the consciousness within the causal body and consciousness within the egoic lotus. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about ego, and maybe from another perspective, the consciousness within the spiritual triad, which is said to be the true ego. Okay, so it is not possible even for the ego fully to sense and express the quality of the spirit. So again, always humility, which is this adjusted sense of right proportion, he calls it. Because it's so easy. He says the beginner, and that's what we are, the beginner is always more conceited than the experienced student. Did he say consciously conceited? I'm not sure, but always more conceited, exaggerating his or her own abilities when they should not be exaggerated. So, it is not possible even for the ego fully to sense and express the quality of the spirit. Hence, the utter impossibility for human consciousness justly, I mean, we could appraise it, but not justly to appraise the life of the spirit or monad. Now, he is using the word spirit and monad equivalently, which is not always the case. But generally speaking, it is. Now, I just want to say spirit is not will. We must differentiate between spirit and will. Spirit is not the first aspect of divinity. The monad as a center represents the first aspect of divinity, but the very heart of the monad is spirit, which is not the first aspect, the second aspect, the third aspect, and yet they all derive from spirit. So in another way, they are spirit. What I have noticed, language kind of presents a problem here, because we oftentimes we say life quality appearance. Well, appearance has a lot to do with the third aspect. It is the form in manifestation. Quality has to do with the second aspect, or soul. But life per se is not the first aspect. life is something much more internal, much more essential than the first aspect, which is will. Will derives from life. Quality derives from life. And objectivity or manifestation, appearance, they derive from life. But right there on the borderland between the essence of the monad and the will, there are confusions in people's minds. Okay, so that was the evolution of spirit and why we really can't do much more than look at how the form is evolving and how spirit will express ever more adequately through progressively developed form. B, the working of the flame divine under the law of synthesis. Sometimes the word flame is quite an objective, concrete word when compared with fire. And sometimes flame, the use of the word flame gives us a still higher sense of things than the word fire. Everything depends on the context. So when we're dealing with the third fire and what it deals with the working of the flame divine under the law of synthesis, a generic term which will be seen eventually to include the other two laws as subdivisions. Now, what does he mean here? There is the law of synthesis, but somehow it includes the law of attraction and the law of economy. And these three laws are the three most prominent cosmic laws. There are probably others, this intermediate law of karma, maybe it can be called a cosmic law. But anyway, somehow there is a flame, a divine flame, working under the law of synthesis. What is this law of synthesis? Well, it's going to be remote to our understanding, but it reveals literally that all things are one thing, and that the many are the one, not just that we kind of suppose they are and theorize that the many are the one and make justifications that the many are the one. No, we realize that the many are the one. So under this law of synthesis, the many are revealed to us as the one, and our receptive apparatus is brought into such a condition that we can realize more and more that the many are the one. It just kind of comes upon you, and it, what the Tibetan calls it, blotting out all form. Rule number 5 and rule number 9 deal with the blotting out of all form. And I can even show you here, if I am successful, and if I don't, if I remember to actually show it to you, hiding, how does he say? Hiding something and blotting out all form. So I'll get there and reveal it to you in just a minute. Well, rule 5, there it is. And I will show it. And the statement is, the macrocosmic whole is all there is. Let the group perceive that whole, and then no longer use the thought, my soul and thine. So that's a special preparatory stage to rule 9. where he says, and this is in Rule 9, there's a conversion here from the many to the one. And, the many to the one is kind of a third ray mode of proceeding, and 9 naturally is a number related to the third ray and determines the cycle of third ray events. So it is the number associated with third ray cycles. Let the group know there are no other selves. Well, there seem to be a lot of selves, don't there? Let the group know there is no color. Color out of the veils, right? The forms, the differentiations. There is no color, only light. And then let darkness, whatever that really is, it's not what we think. And then let darkness take the place of light, hiding all difference, blotting out all form. There it is. Hiding all difference, blotting out all form. Now, we can reach a stage of consciousness where this is true of us, that we have succeeded in hiding difference and in blotting out form. I'm sitting here in our little temple, and there must be 500 objects around me if I really get detailed. Well, am I going to see all those objects individually? Or am I going to blot out those forms and see only the one all-pervading reality? So that's what we're working towards, that no matter what we see, no matter what we can handle, no matter what we relate to, there is this one all-pervading something that arises in consciousness with the blotting out of form. And as I said, keep the eyes in a motionless state and use the heart. And then that something, whatever it is, will appear. And it will be a different stage of consciousness than we are accustomed to. Now, a little more, not much more, because we're pretty much there. So, we cannot, in our soul nature, which we have not even yet achieved, because who is the one who knows that he or she can always focus within the causal body with continuity? Pretty rare, I would say. That would be the third degree initiate. Okay? So the physical body can't take in all of the soul, and really the whole personality cannot take in all of the soul, and the soul or ego cannot take in all of the monad. And this flame of divine synthesis is always working on us until we realize the one in the many. And when I use the word realize, I hope I'm getting closer to that particular power, which is found on the 5th sublevel of the atmic plane, counting from above. Realization. And the law of synthesis, and we could work it out. It would be a great paper a couple of hundred years from now for someone in one of the new esoteric schools. How is it that the law of synthesis does include the other two laws? How did that happen? How would you explain it? And then the third fire deals with point C, the subsequent result of forward progressive motion. a motion which is rotary, cyclic, and progressive. It includes them all. When you're driving forward through space with forward progressive motion, there is rotary motion, but it turns into the spiral. And of course, it keeps moving towards its objective. Our whole solar system has that more or less straight line motion towards a distant objective, even while it is revolving around the Pleiades. The whole matter dealt with in this treatise concerns the subjective essence of the solar system, not primarily either the objective or the spiritual aspect. And this is why this treatise spends the most time dealing with solar fire. It's almost a pain to go through all this stuff on fire by friction, but it is foundational and necessary. So, the great majority of pages deal with subjectivity, or the relationship between father and mother, or between spirit monad and the appearance, the objective aspect. It concerns the entities, capital E, who indwell the form, who demonstrate as animating factors. Now, anima is another word meaning soul. So when he speaks of animation, we are speaking of soul activity, and that's the kind of fire we're looking at now. It concerns the entities who indwell the form, who demonstrate as animating factors through the medium of matter. When the soul withdraws, there's not a whole lot of animation going on in the personality. It's just going to fall apart. And primarily through etheric matter. I think there's a way that a master can look at your etheric body and evaluate the condition of your causal body, and maybe vice versa. Yeah, so in a minute, Karen, we're going to get to all those questions and things. Okay. So it concerns entities who indwell the form, who are evolving a second faculty, the fire of mind, the linking fire of mind, solar fire, neutral electricity, as it's called, and who are essentially themselves points of fire. An entity is a point of fire. This is amazing thought. Cast off through cosmic friction, produced by the turning of the cosmic wheel. Which wheel? How many wheels? Swept into temporary limited manifestation, and due eventually to return to their central cosmic center. Now these are, if I could write it down, but I can't here, these are emanations. These are the sparks. These are every entity that is thrust out into objectivity and then returns eventually to the central cosmic center. They will return, plus the results of evolutionary growth, and through assimilation, that's what we're doing out here, we're assimilating, they will have intensified their fundamental nature and be spiritual fire plus the fire monastic. Well, that's a wonderful paragraph, very, very strong, and very full of hints. We're dealing with, and we will discover it more and more, subjectivity. Not the spirit monad so much, or maybe only 100 pages are given to it. Not the objective form so much, maybe only 100 pages are given. And 1,000 pages in the middle of the book are given to the subjective fire. And all of us right here in this little incarnation are also evolving a second aspect, a soul aspect, a consciousness between spirit and between spirit and matter, between the essence and the objective expression. And it's quite interesting here to see that all of us as emanations are points of fire cast off by cosmic friction. Now, eventually, if we get to the absolute supreme wheel, there's nothing that that wheel could be in friction with except infinite possibility. So that's almost too much to consider. But the cosmic wheel is pretty much galactic at this point in a practical sense, and the galaxies will enter into cosmic frictional relationships. Meanwhile, all the various entities have, of much lesser scope, have a frictional relationship with each other, and also a harmonious relationship later, and eventually come into realized synthesis with each other. Now, in our solar system, we're not there at all. Our solar system is not even a sacred solar system, nor is our solar logos a sacred solar logos. So we're still pretty much at that level of frictional interrelationship, trying to achieve a harmonious interrelationship. We're working on the transfiguration within our solar system, and everything before that is pretty much frictional, cosmic fire by friction. Okay, so that's going to be it for right now. And if I can just keep things clear, this is the end of discussion. I'm talking to myself, of course, but we will soon be talking to each other. On the 13th, Friday the 13th of November, and beginning on 20 November, unless, of course, there is something that intervenes, a more important priority. And I haven't checked those out exactly, so I don't know. But if something still more important comes up, we naturally reschedule these types of programs, which are more informational. Okay, friends, that's it for the moment. And now it's your turn.
Michael?
Yeah.
Before Karen had raised her hand, Frederick had written a question in the chat box.
Okay.
And the question is, don't you think that this super universal deity can be explored under our soul?
I don't think so. Because, the only thing that re-enters the infinite super universal state is the entirety of the universal logos. And in other words, by that time, we are no longer distinct emanations. So when you talk about soul, you're pretty much talking about a microcosmic thing. And we rise into the state of universal soul, universal being, and maybe, well, I think that's all that's left, really. I mean, if I ask you or anyone, what were you doing 5 universes ago? It can't be answered because there was no you as you presently conceive yourself to be. You were the one and only universal logos and always will be when there is universal manifestation. Whatever is Frederick or Michael or any other apparent being is completely reabsorbed into our truer identity, which is that of the universal logos. And that universal logos is always the same extension of the super universal deity. It's an extension into finitude of the super universal deity. Every universe is an adventure in objectivity. So when we talk about soul and exploring the super universal deity, what we're doing is we're talking about exploring articulated absolute infinity, which is the reflection of the super universal deity. And how can you explore that? That's one of the reasons universes exist, so that piece by piece, bit by bit, we can become familiar with infinite possibility. In a way, the only being who is cognizant of the super universal state is certainly not us. In our limited state, it is us as the super universal deity. We are that too, and we can exist in self-contemplation, which is essentially the contemplation of articulated absolute infinity. That's the only being that can register articulated absolute infinity, because it's a self-reflection. So we little emanations, we will never, as emanations, go beyond any universe. We will only be reabsorbed with what you might call the retraction of the ray of the absolute into the infinite, into the super universal infinite stage. And even that is just a step along the way to ultimateness, which I call absoluteness. So what is it that registers this super universal absoluteness, this absolute infinitude? It's the one and only super universal deity, which essentially we are. And in that state, we can behold ourselves during a period and contemplate that that absolute infinitude. Now, of course, we're way out there, when we talk about these things. Right now, basically, we have to achieve the soul consciousness you're talking about. We have to be able to, way down here on our microcosmic level, we have to be able to focus within the causal body, within the egoic lotus, within the spiritual triad, and eventually within the monad. That's just the tiniest little bit of progress, but that is what we have to do. And these higher speculations simply kind of inspire us with the idea that our progress in universe is ongoing and that we will re-become the universal God which we are. We are also the super universal God, but the whole Mahapralaya of a universe has to occur before we realize that fact. I mean, we're dealing with very abstract matters here, but basically the soul can explore, let's just say, keep it within due bounds. The soul can explore the cosmic, etheric, physical plane. And for a long time to come, that is our field of exploration. And what I'm trying to talk about is so far beyond that there's no charts even in the books which can indicate it. Thank you, Frederick.
Karen, thank you for your patience. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Well, having some perspective here, but I'm confused, Michael, by what you said about the first aspect. You said it is not life, it is not spirit, it is will. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I said. Yes, will is a driving and sustaining directed force which fulfills purpose and which leads to, at a certain stage of development, to objectification. There is will, wisdom, and activity. Those are the three kind of words that are found in relation to the monad, right? So let me see if I can get here.
Because mostly in the listings that we see, just like on the footnote on 48, it always talks about Father, Son, Mother, Spirit, Soul, Body.
Yeah, spirit, soul, body. There's a problem between the 4 and the 3. The mother is sometimes 4 and sometimes 3. Here is you see the chart here, will, wisdom, and activity. In the middle of that triangle, and in the middle of every triangle, is pure being or spirit. Now, let's just remember that words are oftentimes used imprecisely. And even by Alice Bailey, when she says, infinite, she oftentimes means simply a big number. Well, that's not the technical meaning of the word infinite. Infinite, in a way, is no number at all. It has to do with, it's an indefinite. It just has to do with continuing the counting. You never arrive, when you're dealing with the infinite, at any specific number, although some mathematicians have tried to do that. So when you're looking at will, wisdom, and activity, they all derive from being. That's the thing they all derive from being. That's the thing to remember. That being is of the essence, and this directing, sustaining power of will, whereby we achieve the objectives within consciousness. We achieve them with wisdom, and we use our intelligence to help with this achievement. They are not spirit per se, and yet they are. In other words, they all come out of spirit, and spirit is always found at the center of such triangles. And from another symbolic perspective, spirit is found at the center of the circle. And there's a kind of thing there we always, when we should have a 4, we oftentimes use a 3. So we have life, quality, and appearance. And, you know, to me, life is being, is essence. Now, if somebody wants to say that life is the driving force of will, okay, maybe I can go along with that. But then I want something else in the center of the triangle from which life, quality, appearance derived. I want there to be in the tetrahedron an originating point that is responsible for the coming forth of 3 other points. I've wrestled with this a long time. The problem with the 3 and the 4, and the fact that the 4th factor, which is really the first factor, is often not mentioned. So I hope that's a little bit clearer. The idea is being is, isness is, essence is. And the first extrusion arising from being is will. The second is wisdom, and the third is active intelligence. But the being is fundamental. That's what I've been trying to say. And that in our formulations, we don't always take that into consideration. Just in the same way, is the Holy Spirit the mother? Well, then why did the Spirit brood upon the face of the waters? See, the waters are the mother in this case, and the Spirit is the Holy Spirit. So sometimes we look at a triangle, we say, Father, Mother, Child. But from another point of view, the mother aspect can be considered the 4th, and that brooding Holy Spirit can be considered the 3rd. So it's just a question of how we play with those numbers if we want to straighten out the almost inevitable confusions that come from mixing up the 3 and the 4.
Do you think that will and purpose are similar or the same?
I think that will is the 1 sub 1, and purpose is 1 sub 2, and intention is 1 sub 3. So I believe that purpose has to do with an archetypal arrangement which the driving energy of will sees through to completion. So basically, you know, you can have a purpose, but without will, it doesn't get accomplished. So I still differentiate between them. And instead of putting purpose in the first position, I put it in the second position. I think of it as an arrangement of factors which the driving force of will has made possible. So I look at will as the first emanation, and I'm not sure that's the right word, but the first arising coming out of being. Being doesn't change. The point in the middle of the triangle never changes. If you go deep enough, it is essential, and there is nothing else than it. And eventually, that point within the triangle, what you find out is that it is the representation of absoluteness in a manifested world. So I'm always a person for the four, the three obvious and the latent internal sustainment of the three which are obvious: will, wisdom, and activity.
Okay,
And
thank you.
yeah, I don't know, one has to ponder it, let's just say, but when I look at the monadic vehicle, it's composed of will, wisdom, and activity, and and its own type of matter. Now, why doesn't it just disappear? Well, it does disappear at a certain point. The monadic vehicle is destroyed. What's left? Well, the factors, will, wisdom, and activity, rise to a still higher level, but it's the being, it's the essence, which really survives the destruction and always will survive the destruction of any temple. Every temple eventually, even though it serves its purpose, every temple is destroyed eventually because it's still a limitation. That's the story of the rich young man in the Bible, right? He had a great temple, a highly advanced individual, and Christ basically said, well, you've outgrown your temple, so let it fade away and in essence sell it, give it away, which is what we do. We offer all of our gifts, we give it away, it disappears, and something new comes into focus, something much bigger. But the rich young man loved his temple so much he wouldn't get out of it, and so he couldn't follow the Christ. And I think that's a story that goes all the way up. The essence is what we're after, and the essence is not quite the same as that which comes out of the essence. Sergioli, maybe you have the psychosynthesis books. He wrote a little bit, right? He had the psychosynthesis manual, and he has in it the egg diagram, as it is called.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay, so will is the first thing that comes out of the egg, but it's not the essence of the matter. It just depends on how people use words, really. And they use them in different ways. So that's why Voltaire said, look, if you want to converse with me, define your terms. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Michael,
Okay.
sorry,
Yes.
Michael, Stacy.
Yes.
Can I continue something? I don't know, can I express this, because I have been, while you are talking, trying to listen and at the same time thinking what was something what came on me about this, the stages of evolution, if we call that something which is about life also as evolution. And when we think about our mind structure is such that we somehow has to define terms and put them in categories that we can have some kind of clue of that. So while you were talking, I was thinking that if we think about these three divisions, it seems that it is in every level the three. When we think about the spirit, and we define that as the will, as the love, wisdom, and as activity. And all of that, what we are concerned, is under this third aspect of prama. So our monad is on the cosmic physical plane. So in spiritual sense, in this solar system, we are like in the mineral kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we think about the soul, and through all of that, it is like the building is going on. So it is looking like we are all the time trying to build the vessel for that some consciousness that we are now studying.
Hmm.
So we need to build now the vessel from our perspective to the soul. The causal vehicle has to be completed. So, and then it was coming to my mind what DK says, something very interesting, that the misuse of energy is seen in the vegetable kingdom, and thus we have diseases. And so we are talking about soul lotus, or we egoic lotus. So from soul perspective, we are like in the plant kingdom. And then from the perspective of ourselves, we are like in the animal kingdom. So it's like, all, as it is said, as above, so below. So all this seems to turn around. So spirit, it's just very rude idea. But anyway, like the spirit is in the mineral kingdom, soul is in the vegetable kingdom, and human being is on the animal kingdom. So now we here try to build this causal vehicle, complete it and make it as it should be. But then comes this vegetable kingdom, so important for us. If that is so, that or and it has to be, as TK says, that the misuse of energy is causing the diseases, and it is seen in the plant kingdom. So then I'm just questioning via this truth that, wow, it looks like that when we think about spirit, it looks like that the spirit itself is trying to learn. Because who else have been then misusing the energies? It has to be then this spirit. I know that these words are totally wrong, but on this way of pilgrimage, the Shiva aspect has been using somehow the energies wrongly, because now when we are building, we have to build something and organize something back into correct way, so that this flow of energies can be coming to the lower kingdoms. So now the plant kingdom is so utmost important role for us when we think about this building process.
You know,
And
yeah, I just want to insert there that in the Barborka book, I don't, is it called the Divine Plan? Anyway, he emphasizes that man is called the Saptaparna, which is the seven-leaved plant.
right.
So the plant analogy is right there in the wisdom, and has to do with the principles of the human being.
Right. So
Yeah.
the seven leaves plant is the tree, the symbolism of the tree of life.
Yes, and yes, we can relate that as well. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but
Those
anyway,
are, yeah.
I know that I couldn't get, because it's so vast idea, and so it is not completed. But it just made me to think how interesting it is to study, if we take these three aspects, on which level we are when we think about this lowest for us from our perspective. The lowest, it's we have reached the animal in us. But then in the soul level, it's like the soul has reached the vegetable, but the spirit is then in mineral, but they are in their own arc. And I know it has to be still thought through, but I was thinking that is somehow interesting to see.
It is definitely worth indicating, and there are all these, kind of, there is the mirror like in reflection like this, but then there's also correspondences, like where one triangle from above sits on a triangle from below, then you have these correspondences. But when you invert it, then you get a reflection. And so things can change position accordingly. And the monad, let's say, instead of manifesting mentally, is manifesting on the lowest plane. So, it just depends on the perspective that you use. One is a
That's right.
reflection and one is a correspondence. Yeah, okay, well, all of those, lots of thoughts there to explore, for sure. And look, here's one thing that makes us a mineral. We reach a stage of evolution that we call ourselves the diamond soul. Okay? A diamond soul is a becoming initiate of the 4th degree. Not quite there. But what has happened is that the synthesis petals have burst open and they have revealed the jewel in the lotus, which is the mineral in man. So from that time on, he is associated with the mineral kingdom in a higher way. The jewel is the central point. Now, even that is destroyed, and who knows how many jewels there are as we ascend through the vehicles. But the diamond
Right.
soul is an accomplished 3rd degree initiate who enters number 4. Now, the 4th is in a way related to the mineral kingdom. Human, animal, vegetable, mineral, number 4. Only
Exactly.
it's 4
Yeah.
above. At the 4th initiation, the diamond appears, okay, and then is destroyed. Completely appears and then is destroyed. And then also there is the lower mineral, higher mineral, lower mineral, and relativity is what we have to investigate according to the law of analogy, which you are doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, Sanjay, we will get to you after Frederick, who has had his hand raised.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Frederick, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, good morning, gratitude. If we come back to the egoic lotus and centers you were showing before, could we connect the active intelligence aspect to the universal consciousness? Because there are some kind of interaction and evolution between the active intelligence and the universal consciousness.
Let's see if I can understand Frederick. So what I'm going to do is go to the map, right?
Yeah, yes.
And is this the map you're talking about?
Yeah, this one, yes, the one you were showing before.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I was pointing the active intelligence over there.
And by that, do you mean this is the monastic?
The other one up. If you go up.
Oh, there.
This one.
Yes.
And where we get the universal consciousness to improve and to learn from our universal knowledge in terms of how the active intelligence will improve and interact.
Yes, it will interact with the higher mind, with the abstract mind, with the monastic, definitely, with the monastic permanent atom, which will be connected. Well, actually, the whole ray structure of the egoic lotus is determined by the monastic permanent atom, but let's just say the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus are connected to the monastic permanent atom. So from active intelligence to abstract mind to the knowledge petals, and thence to the mental unit, and to these factors which represent the mind in the lower chakra centers, which are etheric and astral and partially mental. So it comes down all the way from the top. Yes. And I'll tell you what, it's even more a bit more complex because the chakra system on the Buddhic plane is not revealed. The chakra system on the Atmic plane is not revealed. Excuse me. And certainly on the monadic and logoic plane is just not revealed. And yet, vortices of force exist on those etheric parts of these higher planes and determine initiatory status. So, I take this from the idea that 35 vortices of force make a master. 7 chakras times 5 planes. So they have to get into the transmission as well. When we talk about, probably on the logoic plane, is the archetype of everything that appears as principles and as chakric vortices below that logoic plane. But the origin is up here. And who is to say the origin is here? We probably have to go to the cosmic astral plane and beyond. We're always going to seek a higher origin until we reach the universal logos itself. So part of emanation is creating vortices. I guess that's my conclusion. And all of these beings that appear and these forms that appear are the result of those vortices which are created, ever smaller as we descend, ever larger as we reascend. Now, I'm not sure that I got your question, but basically, yes, they are connected. Active intelligence to the monastic permanent atom, which, by the way, will be the center of a monastic vehicle once the egoic lotus disappears. So we don't yet have a true higher monastic vehicle. We have a lower mind, and we have a substitute vehicle in the egoic lotus, but it's not really our own. We need a monastic vehicle after the 4th initiation. Probably intuition will be much more used than Manas, but you can tell Master DK is certainly an expert in Manas, and he's using it quite a bit. So those higher vehicles are not yet built, but they're being built. Yeah, they're being built. Yeah.
I saw recently that some physics experts saw that chakra are linked in some way to some black hole. That means at this physical etheric level. There are some new research on that point.
Interesting. Black holes and white holes, yes. When they disappear, it's black holes, and when they emerge into manifestation, it's white holes. Yeah. Well, okay, all of that is coming. We just have to stick with our esotericism long enough to learn it and be able to wield the law, which means we have to serve, because if we don't, those mysteries will never fall into our hands in the right way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now the questions from Sanjay.
Yes.
Cannot this super universal deity control or regulate the world chaos? Why is it permitted at all if all universes are so organized?
Well, it's a good question. The regulation of chaos has to do with the sphere of experience of the regulator. Now, we've got a lot of chaos on Earth, and the regulators are the human kingdom, the hierarchy, and Shambhala. So we can't go way beyond that, because the whole universal process is about moving from an organized archetype through a disorganized relationship between emanations and back to the reflection of that archetype. That is our work. We go forth into reduced consciousness, reduced potency, reduced scope. Every emanation is less than that which emanates it, and does not yet, that's the whole game, that's the whole play, the whole dance. It does not yet reflect in absolute controlled perfection what the archetype on the very highest planes indicates. Our task, our work, our game, our dance, our drama is to restore the archetype from within the mosaic world. Now, you've seen mosaics. You know, you stand away from them and they look like one image, because but if you go up, you see hundreds of little pieces all divided up, and yet they are in such a relationship that they reflect that archetypal image. That is what our task is, and it's part of, I don't know, the habit, the creative joy, you might say, or of the emanating deity. Now, this super universal deity is absolute infinitude, and in a way is not involved in intra-universal matters. But the ray of the absolute, or coming through the ray of that deity, or becoming a ray of that deity, throws forth into a finite condition a small aspect of the infinity. And then it is all supervised by a universal logos, who is involved in a kind of dance, a kind of lila, a kind of process which calls for all of the internal skills and that it has when in an emanated state. Otherwise, there would just be nothing to do. Everything would be perfect from the very beginning. The realm of the universe is the Mahamaya, and is the realm of imperfection seeking to become perfection. And, you know, I don't think anybody can answer that. That is our game, if you will, universe after universe. So, you know, who is to permit what? The permitter in a universe is the universal logos, but the permitter becomes all the different parts. It's self-becoming. It's not creation standing back and say, I created this. It is self-becoming. And those reduced units of consciousness have to find their way back into archetypal wholeness, and the little pieces of the mosaic have to be reconstituted through intelligence to become a reflection of the original archetype, which stands as it is, as purpose on the highest levels of the universe. I mean, you know, okay, these are big questions, and they have to be, examined really carefully, really carefully. We have nothing to do, we as little emanations, we have nothing to do even yet with the universal logos, and infinitely less to do with the trans-universal deity, which we are also. We leave that behind as a universe is created.
And Sanjay followed that up with the question, so the chaos was designed?
No, not exactly designed. Let's just say that out of relationship, which is not which is slides into imperfection through reduction of consciousness, because less and less consciousness is available for every emanation. Out of that, the chaos arises, and it is the lifting of the veils, of the rings past not, of the inhibitions on larger consciousness that restores us to archetypal design. And how we get there? There is free will, and we don't even know how we get there. It has to be worked out while in a cosmos. So every one of us has a duty to remove the veils and begin to amalgamate with the other parts of ourself until we are restored in consciousness to the oneness which we are. But the paths by which that happens are not dictatorially determined. They may exist within absolute infinitude. In other words, all the possibilities exist there. But it is not decided what we shall choose in order to unveil our inner being. So after involution comes the turn, which we call an evolutionary unveiling, and a return first to unity and then to synthesis, which is oneness. And the methods exist according to our free will. In a way, what else is there? There's nothing else to compel our free will. There's only one will in all of cosmos, and that will is differentiated through reduction of power and scope. But eventually it becomes stronger and stronger with the unveiling. And the unveiling helps us change chaos into a reflection of the archetype. Every universe has its archetypes, its purposes.
Now, I want to get to Sri Yantra's question.
Yes, I saw it.
There's a follow-up with this line of inquiry.
Yes.
Frederick asking, isn't it also part of our soul duties to experience it?
Experience what? I mean, all in due time. We experience ever higher arenas, ever higher points of tension, which reveal ever higher energies that we have passed on the way down, in a way, and they are re-revealed to us. They are, and here's the word, recognized. So yes, of course, the soul, which is essentially internally the spirit, once it is taking upward way, has the duty to expand until it becomes the one, until it re-becomes the one soul of the universe. That's what we are. We're the one being of the universe, the one soul of the universe, and we are all forms of the universe. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's this fantastic section where Krishna reveals to Arjuna the form of God, the completed form of God, and we are that. We come to realize that we are the essence, we are the archetypal arrangement of the emanations. We are the one form of God, but we have to undress ourselves of the veils. You know, that dance of the seven veils has an archetypal meaning to it. It's not just between Salome and John the Baptist. So yes, it's the duty of the soul to expand until it re-becomes in full consciousness the one soul of the universe, for which there are different names. Okay.
Okay, from Sri Yantra. I don't understand how some planets are sacred and some not. This planet is not apparently, and you said something about our solar system is not sacred. Is there a reason that is known?
Well, it has to do with the the fact that these planets are beings. These solar logoi are beings. These constellational logoi are beings, and they're all evolving. And they're, you know, we could go on with galaxies and all the rest. They're all evolving, and they are evolving in such a way, to put it in human terms, that they take one initiation after another. And in the ageless wisdom, the capacities of a being who has taken a third initiation renders that being at the beginning of the path of sacredness. They have many more capabilities. In other words, we human beings, at the third initiation, we begin to take solar initiations and to relate more to the sun than to the moon. This gives us a whole new range of abilities, which progress until we are a master of the wisdom at the fifth initiation, and really can be called, because of our powers and consciousness, sacred relative to those who stand at earlier stages of initiation, earlier stages of unfoldment. Now, the same is true of planets and of solar logoi and beyond. Sirius is a solar logos that is considered sacred because initiatorily it has journeyed beyond the unfoldment that as yet has been achieved by our solar logos soul. And probably, so it's the number 5 that seems to be the determining factor. When a kind of fifth initiation is taken by a great entity, then they are said to be sacred because of their new abilities, their powers, their consciousness, their capacities, and so forth. Our solar logos has not taken as many initiations as the logos of Sirius has. It is one initiation behind, or maybe two. Our solar logos has taken the second cosmic initiation, which does not yet warrant the beginning of the path of sacredness. But it's working on number 3, which would be a kind of transfiguration for our solar logos. Sirius has taken the third cosmic initiation and is at the beginning of this path of sacredness when we're talking about the kind of sacredness available to these great solar logoi. Now, coming down to our Earth, let's compare it to Venus, because in a way, our solar logos is to Sirius as our Earth is to Venus. It's an analogy. Our Earth has only taken one cosmic initiation, not even two. And it must eventually take 5 cosmic initiations before it can be considered truly climactically sacred. Venus has taken more initiations. And so, and there are other sacred planets who have taken many more initiations than the Earth. And Venus is very near completion of its process. And the number 5 is very prominent in Venus. Now, we're sure that Venus has taken the 3rd cosmic initiation along the line of initiations that a planetary logos can take. It's a different system than the initiations that a solar logos can take. Maybe Venus has taken even more than 3 cosmic initiations. So to sum it all up, it is the initiatory status of any being that renders it in this system sacred or non-sacred. In our solar system, Pluto, Mars, and the Earth are non-sacred. They have not yet taken a kind of 3rd initiation, which puts them on track to take a 5th initiation, which will confirm their sacredness. But Vulcan, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, Neptune, Uranus, they are planets that have either in this incarnation or in the previous incarnation taken an initiation which is at least equivalent to the 3rd cosmic initiation. And hence we call them sacred because of their additional powers and their additional consciousness. So that's, as I know it, Sriyantra, that as I know it, or think I know it, that's the reason for the distinction between sacred and non-sacred planets, which does not mean that they're not all great gods when compared to the human being. And the solar logo, even if non-sacred, are huge gods when compared to the human condition. Thank you for your question.
And Sri Yantra says, okay, clear. We have a bit of work to do. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
thank you, and loves the class.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. We're all learning together here. And yeah, we have a bit of work to do, but this is not to say that any one of us is all of us. One of us as all of us as the one have not been through this forever, cyclically. If what is said in the stanzas of Dzyan regarding the great breath is true. And since Master Kuthumi prepared the translations of the stanzas and the items that Blavatsky comments on, and since Master Kuthumi is an initiate of the 6th degree, a Chohan, we can assume that what he is saying about the great breath, etc., is true. At least use that as a working hypothesis. Okay.
perhaps the last question. Is there and this is from Sanjay, is there a possibility to stay in the physical ashram in physical company of Michael Robbins to speed our learning process sometime, somewhere, if it's not discomforting to him?
Yeah. Well, you know what I think? I'm going to say something peculiar. Everyone is better off. See, what is an ashram anyway? An ashram is a state of consciousness of a spiritual group. So an ashram is an intangible thing. It is not physical. It is not physical presence. As a matter of fact, what I've begun to notice is that a deeper kind of connection can exist etherically and via the new forms of media that then can exist when physical presence, which sometimes acts as an interrupter and an obstacle, is present. See, when we don't have to drag that physical body all over the globe, but can function more as a soul, as a mind, in communion with each other, we can be in one of the outer circles of a true ashram, like Master DK's ashram, and we will be in more intimate contact in terms of soul and spirit than we could when you just gather people together. This is my growing impression.
And can I respond to that too?
Yes, my dear.
Is that, yes, we are going to have here in Finland, we have been planning that already a few years, but because of Corona came, so we were already planning to have it this summer, and this kind of continuation, some of the deep gatherings, because the era of the Forerunner is ending. Yes, we must contemplate together, and luckily we have this international connection, but there is also this amazing magical factor when we gather together and we are not then challenged by the time zones, that we can be in same
Well,
space, that and then take these deep issues. So keep in tune, and that is going to happen when the Corona allows us.
okay, see, I've been corrected here. But look, the idea of gathering together, yes, that's a yes. But the idea of ongoingly living in the same space is, I think, for the future of the new esoteric schools, and who even knows, they will appear in the centuries ahead, and they may be in continuous physical presence, because as Master DK says, certain things can be imparted when, let's say a master is there all the time to make sure the student doesn't get into too much trouble. Okay, that would be an ongoing, continuous situation. We're not there yet. But as far as gatherings go, whether they last a weekend or a week or 2 weeks, whatever they last, that kind of thing can be accomplished, and with good
And
benefit.
also, I don't mind. People are welcome to come even longer time than such than only for the gatherings. Ha 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 ha. But that is the truth.
Yes, yes, it is. Tuija here in Finland is very, very welcoming, and that's great. But I'm just giving you my impression about how ashramic intimacy is achieved, and it is not dependent upon physical presence. It is dependent upon psychological soul presence. That is what makes ashramic intimacy possible. Remember, it's the state of mind of a spiritual group. That's what an ashram is. We have to dematerialize the concept of the ashram. Okay, well, but anyway, yes, we'll have events and we will let you know, absolutely. Okay.
So we've been going about 2¼ hours now.
That's it. That's it. I think that's it.
No other, no other hands raised, no other questions in the chat box.
We got to get out of here while the getting is good, right? Okay, we'll do that. But, you know, I just want to say one more thing. When it comes to the classes that we sometimes hold, you know, have held, and then Corona came along and all that, those we intend to see resumed, and they will be for a number of days. Yes, that is possible. Okay, friends.
And
yes?
then there is the conference coming up, begins April 20th and goes through May 3rd, if I'm remembering correctly.
Gosh, I have to relook at that. But anyway, we're going to have, again, a special kind of conference, this time focused on the fifth ray. And this time, of course, who would want to come to the United States and be in person? And probably won't even be allowed by that time. So let's just say it will be a virtual conference like we did last year. And we did it for almost 2 weeks in a row, and we found it to be very successful. So just keep in mind the fifth ray is coming. And because it is the great ray of initiation, and we'll be discussing initiation accordingly with that fifth ray and many other things that relate to the fifth ray. Meanwhile, also we have, for the people who want to be involved in the Esoteric United Nations, we have that group. And you can talk to Tuya about that particularly. And also the Blue Rose Sisterhood, which includes men as well, to build up the chalice, the contents of the chalice that contains the Christ consciousness, in anticipation of the approach of the hierarchy and the ongoing approach of Lord Maitreya, occupying the role of the Christ. So if you wish to be part of any of those two organizations or organisms, hopefully, you write to Tuya particularly. And Tuya, do you use your own email address, or do you use something else? Maybe you're
yes
not there.
and no.
So, right. Okay.
Yes, I am here. It is always to find this microphone from mobile. Yes, it is. One can use mine, but the best is, of course, their own. There's going a bird over me. The best are those particular addresses.
Yes, we have group addresses, but
And
Yahoo is doing a lot. Things are changing.
I think that Michael Stacy could. Yeah, Michael Stacy could put them there.
If you remember them off the top of your head. But anyway, I at first maybe I would write to Tuya or me.
Sisterhood.
Yes, at yahoogroups.com, at Yahoo. But not everybody can get into that,
yes,
dear, unless they are assigned. So therefore, it's better to write to one of us at first, so they can be put on the list. And remember, Yahoo is changing dramatically. So there's no more of these groups in a very short time. Within a month's time, we're going to have to change everything. which we, will do accordingly. Okay, so just write, I am Infinitize 8. Here, put my address, please, Michael, would you, in the chat box? You know my email address. You can write to me or to Tuya, and we can get you aboard so you can be part of the process of these other groups, if you will or you wish. Okay. Now let's close with the great invocation. Not this great invocation, but the third of the great invocations, which is by far the most powerful. There we go. Okay. So the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Tonight, friends, we'll have our Glamour webinar, and it'll be on GoToMeeting, and that's at 8 o'clock. Well, 8 o'clock our time, 6 p.m. GMT, and we will continue with a new link for our new program, which is a meditation to assist a fair and just outcome of the election in the United States, which is so important for the perpetuation of a recognizable democracy. So, lots of love, many blessings to all of you, and from us on the communications group, we'll be seeing you again shortly. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for your questions and your thoughts. We'll be working with you shortly again. Bye-bye for now.